Hi and welcome back to BrainTease TV. Today we are talking about BMW shaft-driven motorcycles. Now, if you own one of these motorcycles, you may know by now that the drive shaft and final drive assembly are not covered under BMW's routine service check. So you will either need to take it to a garage or do it yourself. So stick around and we'll show you how we manage to get the job done. Welcome back, thank you for joining. Now, first thing is first, safety. Make sure you secure that center stand using something appropriate. In our case, we use the bungee cord. You will then need to remove the wheel. So go ahead and get your tools and remove the bolts from the rear wheel. Then you will need to remove the brake caliper. In our case, we weren't able to remove the wheel without taking off the exhaust. So we had to go ahead and remove the exhaust. You might see other videos where they've managed to remove the wheel without taking the exhaust off. I think some people may have removed the fender or whatnot. Whatever works for you, just know that you need to get the wheel off. So anything that's in the way, you might need to remove it. We found that removing the exhaust was the easiest because it was only 2 bolts to remove and it came off real easy. So that's what we did. Remove any coverings that you might have on your final drive. In our case, we had a plastic cover that was retrofitted using 2 bolts. Just go ahead and remove that. Then we went ahead and loosened the drain plug because we're going to have to drain the oil from the final drive. We loosened the filler plug at the top just to make sure there's a bit of air coming through, just to make the oil run out a little bit easier. it's always good practice to make sure you put bolts back or plugs where you remove them, just to make it a bit easier when it's time to reassemble. Then we went ahead and we had to remove the ABS. Now free your brake caliper from the rest of the assemble and just hang it up. You could use another bungee cord or just a piece of wire, as in our case. After you do that, then you are free now to start to disassemble the final drive from the final drive arm. So we had a little peek there at the boot, at the rear boot, just to see what's going on. Then you can go ahead and remove the bolt from the final drive. I'm trying to get someone to possibly hold the thermal drive whilst you remove that bolt, just in case it comes down. So just something to note, the drive shaft you're trying to remove is connected by two splines. What we found out that it was far easier to remove the drive shaft if we secure the front end of the shaft before we drop down the final drive. So what we did, we removed the boot, the front boot, then we had a crowbar that we get a crowbar wedged in there to hold the drive shaft from moving rearwards when we pull the final drive down, and that kept one end of the drive shaft in place. So when we pull down the final drive, the rear bit of the spline will come away from the coupling on the drive shaft. And then after we've managed that, then we could go ahead and use the crowbar to gently ease the front end of the drive shaft from that spline, and then remove it from the back gently. Now that you've successfully removed the drive shaft from the motorbike, make sure you inspect it properly, Look at the area, look for any leakages, any oil leaks. Have a look at the couplings. Have a look inside where the splines go to make sure that there's no damage there. Have a bit of a shake to feel that there's no free play. Any free play, you might need to think about changing those couplings or changing the shaft, because you don't want that to fail on you while you're in transit. So check out everything, make sure everything's fine, clean it up nicely, and then you can go ahead and apply your grease. After you've greased up your splines and couplings on your drive shaft, you can go ahead and reinsert the drive shaft into the drive shaft housing, taking note of what direction it goes in. So the thickest end of the drive shaft goes in first, so make sure that you put that in first, gently working it in until you can't go any further. You can check again to make sure that there's enough grease on the spline and the couplings. You may have lost some when you're trying to maneuver the parts together. If you feel like there's not enough, apply a little bit more on the shaft or the couplings, or on both if you feel the need to. Now, we found that it was far easier to put the vehicle back together by ensuring that the coupling and the spline at the rear is coupled together first. So the spline is slid into the coupling before we start to connect the front end of the drive shaft, or the thickest end of the drive shaft. Once you've managed to get the rear coupling and the spline together, slid in properly without having to force it, make sure that you put the bike in gear, just to make sure that everything is not turning when you're trying to catch the front spline. So you can turn the brake disc, and that will gently turn the shaft. So this could be a two-man job, but one person could do it. So perhaps gently turn the brake disc while you're trying to maneuver that spline. Now that the final drive and the arm are all connected, you can go ahead and put the bolt back into the final drive and the arm, just to prevent the final drive from slipping back down again. You can also go ahead and maneuver the front boot back into position and replace that zip tie that you had to cut off when you were removing the boot in the first place. Make sure that your drain plug is tightened properly, and then you can go ahead and replace the oil back into your final drive. Now the next thing to do is to put your brake caliper back in place, and which includes your ABS sensor. Now you may need to you don't have to, but you could put a bit of Loctite on your bolt just to make sure they don't come loose. It's always good practice in some of these areas. And then you just tighten your brake caliper and your ABS sensor, but make sure that you don't over tighten the ABS, as it could crack very easily. Make sure you replace any plastic coverings that you removed. In our case, we had this retrofitted plastic cover that we removed. Now we're just putting that back together using 2 bolts. Now you can replace your rear wheel, making sure that the wheel is properly seated before you start to tighten. So it's a good practice to stagger the bolts and make sure they cut properly, and then tighten evenly. and then you can go ahead and replace your exhaust pipe. Now there you have it. The bike is now back together. Everything seems to be working fine. We took it for a little test ride and it felt great. Hope you found that useful. Thank you for joining, and don't forget, like, comment, share and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.